We actually did win the World Series in 2020, but it was a shortened season, and a lot of people don't think that counts. But anyway, thank you for not, any Yankee fans in the room, for not throwing anything at me yet. I woke up this morning, went to my office, turned my computer on, and the very first thing that came up was Facebook, and the very first post was by a preacher friend of mine in Garden City at the Nazarene Church. And Pastor Nathan shared, "I want all of you pastors to remember that you now get to preach an extra hour this morning." So if I go long, you blame it on Nathan, okay? He's got broad shoulders. He's a great guy. We're at the end of our series, Stand Firm, and we're in Daniel 6. It may be considered the climax story because it contains the narrative of the one story all of us remember. What would that be? Daniel in the lion's den. It's one of the most incredible stories, and one I remember hearing from very early in my childhood. But I want to caution you today, this is not a children's story. As a child, I would take from that story the idea of just being faithful to God, which to a young boy meant that I had to eat my veggies, even lima beans. I needed to clean my room up every day, and I needed to stop beating up my little sister. That if I would be faithful to God, that if something would happen to me, God would protect me. I don't mean to say that he would not do that, but I don't think that's the primary point of the story. This chapter 6 is Daniel's final stand. It is him standing firm. It is him answering the critical question that we've been asking every week for 5 weeks now. How do we live and love well in a compromising culture? I think that line is in your outline. Daniel has a high affection for Darius, who is now the king. Just like Nebuchadnezzar thought the world of Daniel. Daniel is one of the highest ranking officials in the empire. Kings and other dictators have come and gone, but Daniel has remained. He's now 6 decades into this. He's 80 plus years old. He has set himself apart primarily because of his character and his competency. There's so much to be inspired when we look at Daniel. There's no scandals. There's no corruptions. You can't even find one accusation against him. And as a result, Darius has kept Daniel on the payroll and given him promotion after promotion. And what we see in chapter 6 is the result of a lifetime of faithfulness. This is not Daniel getting all of a sudden one decision right at the last minute. This is something that Daniel's been in training for every day of his life for this moment. And point number 1, this chapter is the result of a lifetime of faithfulness. This chapter is a result of the lifetime of faithfulness. And the one thing that they challenged Daniel about, and they will challenge you about, and they challenge me about, is our character, and that's letter A. The first thing the critics will attack is your character. Let's look at Daniel 6. I'm going to be reading today from the New Living Translation. We'll do section by section, so I'll read a section and then I'll talk about it. So Daniel 6, beginning verse 3. Daniel soon proved himself more capable. Notice some of the words that are highlighted. Than all the other administrators and high priests, because of Daniel's great ability, the king made plans to place him over the entire empire. Then the other administrators and high officials began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs, but they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, completely trustworthy. So they concluded, our only chance of finding grounds for accusing Daniel will be in connection with the rules of his religion. What a testimony for Daniel. They've looked through all of his life. They can't find anything wrong. He has been representing God with exceptional character for decades and decades. Amazingly, they couldn't find anything. I ask you, could they say the same for you and me? They could not find anything because he was always responsible and completely faithful. They want him out of the way in the worst way. They want to find the least little bit of dirt they can, and they can't find anything. He doesn't have any skeletons in his closet, or something that he might have said carelessly at a party 30 years ago. They've looked at his Facebook and Twitter account, and every post and tweet, just none of them are offensive. They searched, but they couldn't find a thing on him. After 6 decades of public service, they conclude in verse 5, they are basically saying his character is impeccable. So what do? They now go after his convictions, and that's B. When that fails, they go for your convictions. So let's read verses 6 to 9. So the administrators and high officials went to the king and said, "Long live King Darius. We are all in agreement, we administrators, officials, high officers, advisors, and governors." I love it. Some of you have other translations, and they talk about satraps. There isn't a single person in this room could tell me what a satrap is. But anyway, that's okay. That's why the New Living doesn't use that word. That the king should make a new law that will be strictly enforced. Give orders that for the next 30 days, anybody can do this for 30 days, that's what they think. That for 30 days, any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions. And now, your majesty, issue and sign this law so it cannot be changed, an official law of the Medes and Persians that cannot be revoked. So King Darius signed the law. This is a brilliant political move on their part. They're trying to exploit Daniel's faith while they're stroking King Darius. They go to Darius and they say, let's just do a little experiment, just for 30 days. Let's find out who's with you and who is not. Darius says, we can live with this for 30 days. So he signs it into law. He's playing big time into these people. He has been hoodwinked. Even though he had a high affection for Daniel, he doesn't realize what's about to take place. So Daniel is confronted with a compromising law that said for the next 30 days he cannot pray to God. Only thing is, he can only pray to Darius, according to the law. So what is Daniel going to do? Is he going to compromise? Will the people understand if he goes 30 days and doesn't pray to God? What would you do? What do you do when you find yourself figuratively in a pit facing lions? For some in our room, this is not a hypothetical. You are living it as we speak. When you are mocked or isolated for being the only Christian in the classroom or the lunchroom at work, when you are pressured to do something against your convictions, what do you do when you are asked to lie to cover up someone else's decision at work? What do you do in a culture of compromise? Let's look at verse 10. But when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down as usual. Notice the word usual. In his upstairs room, with its windows open towards Jerusalem, he prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done. I want you to notice that phrase, giving thanks to his God. This is nothing out of the ordinary for Daniel. This was a part of his daily rhythm of his life. He does it wide open. They knew that he would. He's not keeping it quiet. He's not hiding it. Daniel's been doing this all along, all of his life. When he finds out that there's a new law, and now he's under a new pressure, he stays with the same routine. It is the key to you and me standing firm in a compromising culture. We do the same thing we've always done in being faithful to God. You see, when the document was signed, Daniel was in the room. He's one of the leaders. He's on the payroll. He sees this law being signed. He knows exactly what it is. It's them trying to get rid of him. He knew it was a personal attack on him. So what does Daniel do? He doesn't get defensive. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't turn over tables. He doesn't go to social media and blast Darius and other people. He just simply goes home and prays as he always has done. It's just another day for Daniel. I think the most telling thing about a person's character is how they respond when they face pressure. I want to tell you the story of a young man named Jonathan Isaac. We're going to play a video in a minute, but I want to tell you a little backstory. Jonathan Isaac is an NBA basketball player. I was having a conversation with somebody in our congregation this morning, and I referred to a lot of the NBA players as thugs, and some of them are. I'm just sorry to say that. Jonathan Isaac is not. Jonathan Isaac is a very godly man who, like Daniel, had his convictions challenged. So in 2020, when COVID came and the riots came in the summer, and all of the sports were trying to figure out how they were going to play, the NBA decided that they would go to a couple of gyms, places to play basketball, and they would do it with no fans in the crowd. And they wrote Black Lives Matter on the floor of those arenas that they were playing in. They told every player, every coach, every official that they had to wear Black Lives Matter shirts and they had to kneel for the national anthem. Watch the video.
Kneel during the anthem, but you also didn't wear a Black Lives Matter shirt. Do you believe that Black Lives Matter?
Absolutely. I believe that Black Lives Matter. A lot went into my decision, and part of it is, first off, is my thought that, kneeling or wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt don't go hand in hand with supporting Black lives. And so I felt like, just me personally, what it is that I believe in, standing on the stance that I do believe that Black Lives Matter, but I just felt like it was a decision that I had to make, and I didn't feel like putting that shirt on and kneeling went hand in hand with supporting Black lives, or that it made me support Black lives or not. I think when you look around, racism isn't the only thing that plagues our society, that plagues our nation, that plagues our world. And I feel like, coming together on that message that we want to get past not only racism, but everything that plagues this other society. I feel like the answer to it is the gospel. I think a lot of people have a stake in it with the flag. A lot of people have a stake in it with the president. I think a lot of people, have a stake in it with hating the flag or not hating the president or whatever. I absolutely push away a phone, condone racism. I'm black. I grew up black. I have a black little brother that lives in America. So I'm not for racism. I don't think that me not kneeling before the game when wearing a t-shirt makes me mean that at all. And that's a part of what went into my decision.
Man of God who refused to kneel, he said, I kneel only for Jesus Christ. Stood proud, the only one standing in the entire arena. Would not wear a Black Lives Matter shirt. A few months later, injures his knee. Nike says, we're no longer going to keep you on our payroll. So his pastor said, Jonathan, why don't you start your own shoe company? So he started a shoe company, and we got our granddaughter, Memphis, a pair of shoes this week. Has a biblical scripture on the shoe, on the outside of the shoe. I got a pair of those shoes. Fortunately, my big feet won't fit in the pair I got, but I'll wear them one day. There are biblical scriptures on them. He's known as Baby Jesus. That's how they mocked him in the NBA, Baby Jesus. Now they call him the Minister of Defense. He would not cave in. He would not cave in when they challenged his convictions. His name is Jonathan Isaac. You can look it up. You can watch the video. You can buy his book. It's called Stand Up Appropriately. Character is not who you are when you get a promotion. Character is who you are when you feel like your world is falling apart. Maybe you had a crisis this week or an unusual amount of pressure from a doctor's report. What came out of you? Those daily habits and rhythms that we create in our relationship to God every day, that helps build our character. All right, let's continue. Verse 11 to 14. Then the officials went together to Daniel's house and found him praying and asking for God's help. So they went straight to the king and reminded him about his law. Did you not sign a law that for the next 30 days any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions? Yes, the king replied. Well, that decision stands. It's an official law of the Medes and Persians. It cannot be revoked. Then they told the king, that man Daniel, one of your captives from Judah, is ignoring you and your law. He still prays to his God 3 times a day. Hearing the king, notice his reaction. The king was deeply troubled, and he tried to think of a way to save Daniel. He spent the rest of the day looking for a way to get Daniel out of this predicament. He really loved Daniel. But they had tricked the king, and he wasn't happy about it. All right, 16 to 20. So at the last, the king gave orders for Daniel to be arrested and thrown into the den of lions. The king said to him, may your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you. A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. The king sealed the stone with his own royal seal, and the kings of his nobles, so that no one could rescue Daniel. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night fasting. He refused his usual entertainment and couldn't sleep at all that night. Very early the next morning, the king got up and hurried out to the lion's den. When he got there, he called out in anguish, Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God, whom you serve so faithfully, able to rescue from the lion's den? I want you to notice that the only one that got a good night's sleep that night was Daniel. All right, 23. The king was overjoyed and ordered that Daniel be lifted from the den. Not a scratch was found on him, for he had trusted in God. It's the reason we sang that song, Trust in You, today. Daniel was faithful. He trusted God with his character and his convictions. All right, pick up 25 to 27. Then King Darius sent the message to the people of, notice the words, every race, nation, and language throughout the world. Peace and prosperity to you. I decree that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed. His rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. I want you to notice that the chapter begins with a prohibition of prayer by the king and ends with a prayer by the king. How ironic. It's not because Daniel stood up and protested. It's not because Daniel got a bunch of lawyers and sued him. It's because Daniel's character was on display and he knew how to stand firm, to live and love well in a culture of compromise. All right, number 2. 3 takeaways from Daniel 6. 3 takeaways, pretty quickly. A, decide ahead of time who you are going to be. You don't want to be in a lion's den and then try to figure it out. Let me say that one more time. Decide ahead of time who you are going to be. It begins with the daily practices you are already doing in your life. You're praying and your Bible study. We have more people in Bible study every week than we've ever had, and in our life groups than we've ever had. We even have some of the ladies, I won't use, you didn't hear me use the word jealous, but I heard this week some of our ladies saying, we need to start a ladies group like you have your men's group. Go for it. Go for it. So it's in the works. It's coming, ladies. So you can share some of the joy that us men are having. So I ask you, how do you spend your time? What do you look at on TV or what computer, or your computer? What do you talk about? What do you worry about? Because if you wait until you are in temptation or a crisis, you'll be cut off at the legs. It's too late. Daniel didn't just all of a sudden show up and muster all the character and courage in the moment. This was decades of faithfulness to God. When I first joined the Church of the Brethren, the very first thing I did was go to a retreat for the leaders at Great Bend, at Heartland Retreat Center. Just a wonderful place run by retired Dominican nuns. And that first night I was there, I'm the new kid on the block. I literally have been in the Church of the Brethren about 5 weeks. And I meet an old sage guy, wise guy, named Marlo Altman, 85 years old, still preaching in the pulpit. And I sat with Marlo every time I got a chance that weekend, that 2 days we were there, trying to figure out what it is about this kind, gentle man. And if any of you know him, and I know Vaughn knows him very well, and his beautiful widow, still very active in the church. I wish I had that sweet, gentle spirit that he had. He was that way because of decades of faithfulness to God. Some of us have been developing those practices for years. Others of us are brand new to Jesus Christ. We're just learning about him. Some of you are brand new. So I'm going to ask you to just begin with just maybe 5 minutes a day. Just open your Bible. If you don't have a Bible, we will be glad to give you a Bible, one that you can understand. We'd be glad to help you to understand where to begin, how to navigate through it. But just begin with 5 minutes. Just take a step towards developing the person that Jesus wants you to be. All right, B. Develop spiritual rhythms that create grit. Not a very pleasant word, but I think it defines what I'm trying to get. Develop spiritual rhythms that create grit. When you think about the spiritual rhythm in your life, what do I mean by this? This would be of them gathering together each Sunday. Some of us would think, well, we gather every Sunday. It is important that we gather here every Sunday. It is, Hebrews chapter 10 says that we need to do that. We need to be in the habit of doing that. Do not get in the habit of neglecting the gathering. It's not just about you receiving, but it is also about you giving something to others. Another one would be to serve generously or spending time in God's Word or prayer. C. Determined to be available to God through every stage and age of life. Let me say it again. Determined to be available to God through every stage and age of life. I know most of our young people are downstairs, but I want you to communicate to them what I'm about to say. Whether you are a young person or whether you are facing retirement, or some of you have been in retirement for a long time. What I love about Daniel is he showed faithfulness when he was 14, and he showed faithfulness till this time when he's over 80. I want to tell everyone in the room, but especially our young people, your time is not off in the future, it is right now. You are not the church of the future, you are the church of today. We want our young people and our youth suiting up and getting ready for the game of life right now. We need them presenting God in their culture, and they're doing a great job. We need older people to come alongside them like the Marlo Altmans of the world, who encourage so many young preachers and young people. People, if you are not a young person, you need to be a cheerleader for our young people. We need to pour our lives into them, and you have been. You've been doing a great job, and our young people are responding. But it needs to continue tenfold. When we have that temptation to be critical of them because they're loud or they're this or they're that, or they wear Los Angeles Dodgers jerseys or whatever, show them a little grace. Love our young people. Love them to death. What they did on our Youth Sunday and what they do every time they lead Youth Sunday. We got young people back there running the camera and running our computer all the time. So here's the conclusion. We got a lot to do yet. We got a wonderful communion service here in just a minute. We need to say that regardless of whatever age I am today, I am going to be faithful, faithful, faithful to God. Here's the conclusion. Here's how we should stand firm. We should stand firm with our arms linked together. Young people, old people, young families, retired people, arms linked together. It's so important. I love it on the first Sunday of the month when we have communion. I picked a song. Francine and I actually met together this week, and we picked all the songs for the month. So if you don't like them, blame it on Francine, okay? Just letting you know how that works, okay? Francine says, I don't think that's exactly how that went, but anyway, bless her heart. We did meet this week. We picked some songs, and we're We're going to sing a song. I don't even have my hymnal. I don't need the hymnal. I love this